December 13th, Giljagur. What a night. I got some sleep after last night's excitement, but Davin apparently got up early to help Ulf with some minor chores. I woke up at 4 to the sound of a snowball hitting my living room window, and looked out to see Davin and Ulf laughing as they roused me from sleep. Davin looked a little sorry when I came out, dressed in my heavy coat and my snow pants, but Ulf looked unrepentant as he grinned through his neat red beard. "Couldn't let you sleep all day, Frady," he said, using the Icelandic word for cousin. "I suppose not. I'll have to remember that while you're trying to sleep tonight and I'm up with the sheep again. Perhaps you can join me in the sheep shed after I pelt your window with some snow." He laughed hugely and socked me in the arm. "Go ahead and try. You'll have an easier time waking a hibernating bear." He invited me to come have some dinner, and we walked off towards his father's house, the smells of a meal already on the wind. As we walked, Ulf let Davin get a little ahead of us and spoke his mind. "Da said you had an encounter with Stekjastor last night." I didn't look at him while we walked, not wanting him to see how unsettled I was. "Did he now?" "He did. He said he stole your lamb. If you're looking for a house pet, I'm sure we could get you another one," he joked, clapping me on the back. I shook my head. Have you ever seen one, Ulf?" Ulf snorted. "A lamb? They're usually everywhere, as you know." I didn't return his mirth. "You know what I mean." Ulf shook his head, and I could see him look away uncomfortably. "Da says they ain't like the stories. We make them look like Dvorgr, but that isn't how they are. He says you're lucky to be alive. They don't usually take kindly to people not of the land." I made a rude noise and pushed him into a snowdrift. "Then you're lucky you've never seen one. They'd probably mistake you for a female and you'd have to explain to your da why you married a troll." He came up spitting snow but grinning, and I raced him to the house as he tried his best to dump snow down my jacket. That night, however, I wished I hadn't joked about the Yule lads. I was back in the sheep shed again. Davin was set to chores the next morning with Ulf, so I was on my own. I was surprised how quickly Davin had taken to Ulf, but I wasn't disappointed either. If Davin was my brother by blood, then Ulf was my brother by choice. The two of us had become very close over the years, and I was glad that he was teaching Davin the ropes. I would have liked to have Davin tonight, though, so he could help me keep watch against the red-hatted little boogin. I knew that the lads would come back every night for 13 nights, and I knew that Strixtastor would be back for another drink of milk, or maybe another lamb. I sat with Gert, her lambs thriving and trying their shaky legs under her watchful eye. I kept a quiet eye on them. The night passed on, the wind a little quieter, and it turned out to be a pretty peaceful evening. I could feel my eyes trying to slide shut as the soft breathing of the sheep echoed through the shed. No mysterious red hat appeared. No doors were cut in the metal. And as my watch beeped 4 a.m., I got up and stretched my legs a little. I stepped outside, hoping that the wind would wake me up, and pulled my coat up as I took it in the face. The moon was edging around, and dawn would be here soon. When I stepped out of the shed, I was thinking of nothing so much as snuggling under my blankets and falling asleep. But that was before I saw the minuscule figure sneaking across the snow and into the cow barn. Sheep may be relatively plentiful around Icelandic countrysides, but cows were definitely a luxury that not everyone could afford. Arnar owned 2 cows, and I knew for a fact that he had bought them at a high personal cost. He liked the taste of sheep's milk all right, but nothing beat a tall glass of cow's milk in the morning, he would often say. He sold the excess in town for a premium, and fed them a special grain to make the sweet cream he loved. The thought of Strekjastor making off with one of Arnar's prized cows was unthinkable. I closed up the shed, making my way slowly towards the cow barn. I wanted to surprise him, if I could, and not catch that sharp little knife in the leg if I couldn't. The snow crunched softly under my feet, and I tried to quiet my steps, aware that any sound might thwart me. The door was ajar when I made my way to the cow barn, and I could hear a soft, angry mooing as I went in. The 2 cows, Rajma and Jmolk, were standing in their stalls, but Rajma was making quite a stir as something small and hairy moved beneath its udders. It was milking the cows, but its hands were moving like the heddles of a loom, going up and down much too fast. The cows were stamping and huffing, but the creature seemed to take no notice of it as it filled the buckets. As it finished, it moved the buckets down a little and slid that cruel knife out as it cut the cow along its flank. The cow surged forward, bawling loudly, but not before a freshet of blood fell into the bucket, turning the milk a frothy pink. For some reason, my mind went to the strawberry milk mix I had used as a kid, and my gorge threatened to rise up and cover the straw. His eyes locked on me as he picked up the full bucket, slurping at the foam on top as it headed for the door. It grinned through its crooked teeth, and I saw that it was not the same one as yesterday. This one must have been Giljagor. He wore a red pair of overalls that barely contained his gut. A similar knife stuck through his belt as it bulged around his middle. His spindly arms seemed to hold the bucket with ease, his other hand sliding the blade over his tongue as he cleaned the cow's blood from it. A similar red hat sat on his head, and his beard was more akin to the foam as he slurped it from the bucket. His eyes seemed to dare me to do something, and when the cow bucked in its stall, I looked away for a little too long. He was gone when I looked back, bucket and all. Arnar arrived at dawn as I finished patching up Rajmar. The cut hadn't been too bad. It had been long and jagged, but not too deep. I could see old scars that I had never really thought too much about, but now made a lot more sense. Giljagor had done this before, many times, and knew just how deep to cut so he didn't miss his treat. He couldn't come back for more if he killed the cow, after all. What a sick little game it had here. "Have you checked the sheep yet?" Arnar asked, guessing what I would find when I did. There was a hole in the shed, not much bigger than the one the night before. I counted them and found we were missing one. It had been a small ram, barely out of its summer coat, and Ulf and Davin found what was left of it later that day by the fence line. The two had eaten well, it would seem, and Ulf found a bucket not far from the ram. There was frozen milk in it, frozen and red. Arnar had nodded. Won't be the first of such sacrifices. He gave me the night off, saying Davos could take the watch tonight and tomorrow night. His kindness, however, did not change the itinerary of the lads in the least bit. Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining me for tonight's story. Well, this is part 2 of our Yule Lads Diary series, and I hope you've enjoyed meeting the second of our lads, Giljagor, known in English as Gullygawk. I know I have a few Icelandic listeners, and for that I am eternally sorry. I know my Icelandic pronunciations are garbage. I'm doing the best I can, you know. Gullygawk apparently steals the foam from the buckets of cow's milk, but as you can see, I put a little bit of a sinister twist on him. I did a lot of research for these stories, and the lads are ultimately supposed to be harmless anytime you read about them. They're more holiday pranksters than dark Christmas entities, but we'll learn a little bit later that everything may not be as it seems. Again, my Icelandic listeners may remember who their mother is and what part she plays in Icelandic folklore. If you're still a little hungry for some holiday tales, might I recommend that you go have a look at my playlist. It's the perfect playlist for the holidays, whether you're trimming the tree or drinking some cocoa or just hoping to elicit those good holiday chills that we all love so much. If you're maybe looking for another holiday boogin to read about, might I suggest my story from last year, Frau Perchta. It's a very graphic holiday story where some children maybe get what they deserve, but not what they wanted for Christmas. If you'd like to get your own copy of my book that contains a lot of the tales we're reading, though not the Yule Lads, that'll be for later, I recommend that you follow the link below to Amazon. You can find all my books there if you've got a horror reader on your shopping list this year. I'm sure you'll find something to fit easily in their stocking, as well as on their bookshelf. Before we go, let's go ahead and thank our patrons. Thanks to Janet for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributor. Thanks to Winter, Xaronan, Emily Coltsfoot, Martha, Marianne Schuler, Jennifer Damron, and Tyler Parker for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. Thanks, guys. We just couldn't do the show without you. If you think you might like to support the show during this holiday season, come on down to Patreon. I always recommend my Ghostly Reader tier because anytime I write a book, you get a signed copy on your doorstep, fit for reading or just for display. I write at least 2 books every year that I self-publish, so what are you waiting for? Come on down and have a look at all the cool stuff we have here on Patreon. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening and a spooky holiday season.